There is no shortage of wise characters in The Lord of the Rings. The first person I think of is actually Gildor, who's a character who isn't in the movies, but just displayed a ton of wisdom when he met with Frodo when Frodo was on his way to Buckland. Read that, I think it's in the third or fourth chapter of The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. I also think of a character like Celeborn or Elrond as well. I think of Gandalf and the wisdom he has, and he's probably one of the wisest characters in the entire series. And of course you have Treebeard, perhaps the oldest living thing in Middle-earth. And if you live that long, you have to have some sort of wisdom. But in the first chapter of The Return of the King, there are these two characters who are both incredibly wise in their own way. And I think J.R.R. Tolkien is pitting them against each other in a small little way, showing you the value of one kind of wisdom over another. Or maybe not one kind of wisdom, but one kind of person and how you become this person versus another. Now, these characters are Denethor and Bergond. Denethor is someone who most people know. He's the Mad King of Gondor, except in the books he's not so much as mad as just stricken with grief. He does say a thing or two that kind of makes me seem like he's mad. Like in the middle of the conversation with Pippin and Gandalf, when they first meet, he says that he wishes Faramir had gone in Boromir's place because Boromir is dead now, which the implication feeling like that he wishes that Faramir was dead. Maybe I'm reading that totally wrong. I know people were commenting in another video that I made about that, but that's not great. He is undoubtedly one of the wisest characters in the book so far. That's the only difference, though. He's so much wiser, and this is probably, again, the biggest difference from book to movie. In the movie, he's not really that smart. He just seems insane. And in the book, he is wise. Almost too wise and too smart for his own good. Because he feels oddly like a politician. And in the essay that I wrote about Denethor a few days ago, I mentioned that he kind of feels to me like an annoying soccer parent who's vicariously living through his more athletic son, Boromir. But I also think another analogy is that Denethor is kind of like someone who seems to love debate and just outwitting people. It's like he needs to be the smartest person in the room. And he needs to prove to the people in the room that he is the smartest. He is that kid that would just jump into a debate with you and just kind of take over the debate and show you how all of your arguments are flawed and weak and his are better. But he's also someone who doesn't seem to realize the wisdom right in front of him at the same time. And I'll talk about this. I think there's a big difference between Bergond and Denethor in their humility versus their pride. But all of this is just say that I think Denethor is very smart and very wise. There's no debating this. He just doesn't seem like a great father, but he's incredibly wise. Now, Bergond is very, very different from Denethor, but still has a good amount of wisdom. Bergond is the man who, he isn't in the movies, but he takes Pippin around the city as Pippin becomes a knight of Gondor. He is a much simpler man than Denethor. And I am struggling in a little bit of a way in this essay. I don't want to call him like a simpleton, but he is just simple in his character, which is weirdly comforting. He is a soldier, he is a father, he's a man who loves animals, he's very hospitable. And I think Tolkien wants us to see these two characters who are in the same chapter and see which one we prioritize and we like more. I would actually be so curious to see if there is anyone after reading this chapter who would say that they like Denethor more than they like Bergond. If you do, I would actually be really curious about that. Please let me know in the comments. I may even make a comment myself saying Denethor versus Bergond, and you just have to comment which one you like more. I would probably say it would be maybe like 98% favoring Bergond, and maybe there's like a few people here or there who have a totally different reading of Denethor than I do who would probably prefer Denethor. Now, I'd rather have Denethor run my city, but I'd also rather have Bergond be my friend. So let me know in the comments what you think. Because, again, I genuinely think in this chapter, Tolkien is trying to show us something about wisdom. First, we meet Denethor. He's a character who almost delights in how wise he is. And someone who asks rude questions to Pippin. Like, why did no help come? And how did you escape? And yet he did not, so mighty a man as he was. Which I guess is a genuine question coming from someone who loves his son maybe a little bit too much, as Gandalf says. But there's a hidden statement in that question. How did you, a little pipsqueak, escape, and my Boromir, the delight of my life, not live. But I want to kind of let the book do some of the talking for the descriptions of Denethor because they are just so good in the book. There are two things that the book says about him that are really, really enlightening for who he is as a character. The first is said by Gandalf before they enter into Denethor's throne room. He says, "Be careful of your words, Master Peregrine. This is no time for hobbit pertness. Theoden is a kindly old man. Denethor is of another sort. Proud and subtle. A man of far greater lineage and power, though he is not called a king." I think it's interesting that he actually notes that Theoden is kindly and he compares the two, but Denethor is proud. And I love these two, that they're in opposition to each other. But the really interesting description after this one comes from Pippin and just his flat out intuition. He thinks this. He says, "Denethor looked indeed much more like a great wizard than Gandalf did. More kingly, beautiful, and powerful, and older. Yet by a sense other than sight, Pippin perceived that Gandalf had the greater power and the deeper wisdom, and a majesty that was veiled, and he was older, far older." It's a great description of how him in like how he looks more important than Gandalf. He's even more powerful than Gandalf in appearance. And in the next little bit of dialogue, he gets into a battle of wits with Gandalf the Grey. Again, someone who probably most of us would put in our top 5 wisest people of Middle-earth. What's your list on that one, by the way? And he actually holds his own and perhaps even comes out on top of Gandalf if Gandalf didn't have that mic drop moment at the end where he called himself a steward of all living things. And he says, "Oh, or didn't you know that?" And then he just kind of like leaves. But for all the wisdom of Denethor, he doesn't seem like that great of a person. He's not someone I would want to spend a lot of time with, or maybe like go to a bar and get a drink with. Or I don't really think he would make that good of a friend. And that's okay, because every character in this series doesn't need to be my friend. I actually think he would be a decent leader. I would not mind him as a leader of my city. But he seems to lack a bit of kindness and perhaps empathy as well. I know his son is dead, and so he's grieving, so there's that. But to want your other son to have replaced your dead son is saying something without saying something. And when Pippin leaves this meeting, he's ravenous and exhausted because he just feels like he was interrogated for an hour. And this is something that Bergond laughs at a little bit. Whereas you finish a meeting with Denethor, you're exhausted. And as soon as you finish meeting with Bergond, he comes into the story right after this, and then he leaves to go do his duty, all you want is for him to be back in the story. I missed Bergond as soon as he left. I think all readers feel this to some extent. Perhaps you just want more information from Denethor, but the side quest that Pippin went on with Bergond was so lovely that it was so sad when he had to go and leave to go to his duty as a soldier. I just wanted to spend the rest of the day with him and Pippin. But this character has immense wisdom as well. He's not just a simpleton from Gondor that just like hasn't traveled. And he's really gentle, because you can tell how he treats Shadowfax when they go and they meet with Shadowfax, and he just strokes him gently right on the head. He's looking a bit in wonder at this horse and amazement. And as Pippin and Bergond are sitting and eating, he's just so full of good, wise quotes. He says this, which is one of my favorites in the book so far. "We have this honor. Ever we bear the brunt of the chief hatred of the Dark Lord. For that hatred comes down out of the depths of time and over the deeps of the sea." And he also says in a few paragraphs later, "Hope and memory shall live still in some hidden valley where the grass is green." And he has so many other small little notes of wisdom in how him and Pippin talk. He is just a man filled with wisdom. He's wise, but he also doesn't think himself to be wise, which is maybe the most important quality of a wise person. He thinks himself to be a commoner, someone who isn't well-traveled, and he actually calls himself foolish in this chapter. His enthusiasm, though, about learning more about Pippin is a beautiful thing, because I actually find that one good attribute that's paired with wisdom is curiosity. Too many people that I know who perceive themselves to be wise lack curiosity about other people, thinking that they already know everything that a person has to offer. And to me, that doesn't seem like wisdom. But Bergond seems to hang on every word that Pippin says, and I think it's really endearing, actually. He is kind and benevolent, and helps Pippin orient himself to Gondor. Someone mentioned in a comment on Bergond that he is like a character you really want showing you the ropes on your first day at a job, or, you know, your first day at school or something like that. He's just so good in that way. But I think the biggest indication of something that something I've mentioned before is in how this wisdom is being shown to be attractive or unattractive is in how both of these men father their children. I think this is no small insignificant thing. Yes, Denethor is wise, but he also seems like a bad father. Now, I don't know this fully yet, as it's my first reading and I'm only on this chapter, but he seems to heavily favor Boromir over Faramir. And so any wisdom that he has just seems a bit unattractive to me because he just doesn't get the small things in life right. And I think this is the indication for what Tolkien was trying to show us about wisdom. In both you have wisdom, but in one, he's ordered the affairs of his day. And he gets the small things right in the character of Bergond. Like he shows up on time to help Pippin. And in how he raised his son, Bergil. For Denethor, he seems to be wise, but perhaps he doesn't get those small things right. Like how to have courtesy to a guest offering counsel. Or even how to be a good father and not wishing Faramir was, dead. Bergil, who is Bergond's son, seems delighted by his father, but also not controlled or doted over by Bergond. And I'll talk more about him probably tomorrow, but Bergil loves his father. And I really have to say, I don't know if I can say the same for Faramir, if Faramir really loves his father Denethor. And I know this is like a small little thing, but I really think this is actually an important note that yes, they are both wise, but one person kind of seems like he's a good father and a good person, and the other seems to be lacking in a few of those attributes. And so I think Tolkien is saying Denethor is wiser than Bergond, but Bergond also has wisdom himself. Now, what would you rather be as a person? Would you rather be wiser and almost like miserable like Denethor is? Or would you rather have a bit of wisdom and be kind and compassionate and be a character that people want to be around like Bergond? Maybe that's like a simplistic way to understand this. And I know this essay was kind of all over the place and just a bit unorganized, but I think that Tolkien is really showing us the same, in this chapter there is this same wisdom, but it's in two different characters. And I, for one, would say that wisdom and how it materializes in Bergond, who is kind and compassionate and loving and hospitable and happy, is much more attractive to me than the wisdom found in Denethor, who is proud and stubborn and unbalanced and a bit strange to say the least. So no matter how wise you are, if you are not a compassionate and kind person, it kind of falls flat. Perhaps, as many others said in different videos that I had, maybe you think I'm reading the character of Denethor wrongly, and let me know in the comments if you do, but that's my reading and I'm sticking to it for now unless I can be proven otherwise. I think putting these two characters in this specific chapter together rather than breaking the chapter up is actually an indication that Tolkien wants us to compare these two characters. They're almost like foils for each other. And I think I really love the world of Bergond. And I cannot say the same of Denethor. So I guess the question becomes, which kind of wisdom do we as the reader want to display? Do we want to let the pride that we have get the better of us and be like Denethor? Or do we want to humble ourselves and be hospitable and not think of ourselves as overly wise and be like Bergond? Honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I think the idea of pride and humility is probably really at the heart of it. But I don't have any more fleshed out thoughts about that. So let me know in the comments what you think and if you agree or disagree with me. Make sure you subscribe for more of this kind of content where I analyze and react to my first time reading through Lord of the Rings. And make sure you like the video, hype the video because it's a new thing on YouTube apparently. And as always, remember to look toward Numenor that was, and beyond to Elvenhome that is, and to that which is beyond Elvenhome and evermore will be. I'll see you in the next one.